We got Sevrin Lavenstein here. We got our Northeast correspondent for Table Talk. I'm Jacob Adler, Northwest correspondent. Pretty good stuff.
Northwest is better, man.
Really?
What's going on out there?
It is kind of going on out here. All right, so lot to talk about in the world of sports.
Certainly is. NFL playoffs in high gear.
For sure. So last week we made some predictions.
It didn't go so well for you, did it, man?
Yeah, I was 3 for 3 going into Sunday night, and then
then it all went apart.
Then it kind of all fell apart because my NFC champ got ousted. But I think the first 3 games were pretty easy to call. Texans beat the Raiders without Derek Carr.
3 interceptions is going to do it.
Yeah.
I don't care if your quarterback's Connor Cook or Tom Brady. It's going to happen.
Yeah. And then Dolphins just got rolled by Pittsburgh.
That was one of the things I thought was interesting about Pittsburgh was I know a lot of people are saying, oh, man, look how great Pittsburgh was with that win. But I don't know. The 80-yard touchdowns from, Antonio Brown, that's all well and good. But it's the Dolphins secondary. So
right, yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah. I thought that, I thought the Dolphins going to that game is tough with Matt Moore, playing for NFL.
Yeah. So, basically just to wrap up the thought, I just thought that a lot of with the playoff teams that were ousted in that first round just didn't look like playoff teams,
Right.
Detroit, 23rd ranked rush attack. Stafford, couldn't sniff the red zone.
Yeah. And
then, like we talked about with Connor Cook, and then the Dolphins offensive line. So, yeah, all didn't look great.
Yeah, I think, I think that Lions game, I think Stafford, he's got a great arm, but it's tough when your wideouts like Anquan Boldin. He had a couple of bonehead plays where he got flagged on a 15-yard. I think it was an unnecessary call, right?
Yeah, he had 2 unnecessary offenses. What did you think about the refs screwing them? Because that's what I heard a lot about.
Oh, really?
I heard a lot of people saying, it's the Lions getting screwed by the refs again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know because I figure. Yeah.
I watched most of that game, and I thought the Lions fairly self-destructed. Bolden pushing a Seahawks guy. He might have said something to him, but he's a veteran. He's played in the league for 12, 13 years. It's you can't really do that in a playoff game. And
the way I see it is you have to be able to win the game in order to complain about calls, and they were never in it.
Yeah, I think sure there might have been a couple calls that didn't go their way, but even if all the calls that went against them don't go against them, they still lose that game.
For sure. I mean, you have to score touchdowns first.
They didn't put the ball in the end zone, so
you're not going to win with 6 points.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we've got some good matchups in the divisional round, though. NFC especially, Packers at Cowboys, great matchup down there.
Yeah, what do you think? Who's winning?
I was kind of thinking about this earlier, but my gut feeling is Packers.
Yeah, you're not jumping on the Falcons bandwagon. Not going with me.
No, not really. But I think in this matchup though, in the Dallas game.
Yeah, for sure. I
think
first,
yeah. I think I just think for Dallas they've been off for 2 weeks, right? So there's always that argument is the bye week actually helpful towards your chemistry, or does it?
Yeah.
Just,
I think it's gonna be interesting with the 2 rookies. I mean, that's really where. Until I see that, I can't really make a whole lot of predictions about the Cowboys' future, which is kind of tough, when they're playing the first game in the divisional round.
Right.
But if they look great, then they'll have much better Super Bowl odds, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think. I think both those teams are primarily built around their offenses. So you've got a Cowboys attack that hasn't been stopped all year, and a Packers offense that looked pretty good against a solid Giants defense.
I think. I would say Dallas is the more complete team, though, because I think their defense again it's largely untested.
Right.
It's not a bad defense, and then Green Bay, I just think yeah, they're riding Rodgers. As far as Rodgers will take them is as far as they will go. And
Yeah.
that defense, I mean, when you play the Packers, you're going to get into a shootout, and that
Right.
defense is not going to do them any favors, I think.
I think that though, I think the one thing Green Bay has going for them though is they do have a Super Bowl winning quarterback on their side, lots of playoff experience.
It's not to sidetrack a little, but it's one Super Bowl in one appearance, and I think it's interesting because don't you feel like, and I don't know, I'm not going to speak for you. I want to hear what you think on this topic,
Yeah.
but I always feel like Rodgers kind of gets the benefit of the doubt when it comes to. I mean, what do we always measure quarterbacks by? It's Super Bowls, right?
Right.
Fair or unfair, some say some of the best quarterbacks haven't won Super Bowls. Dan Marino comes to mind, but at the same time, that's how we judge people.
Right.
Rodgers has only been to one, won it, but at the same time, he's 33 now. Shouldn't there be a little bit more pedigree there?
Right.
I mean, he's always considered, one of the best there is, and I think in the game right now, absolutely top one or two for sure. But that being said, I find it interesting that there's not more scrutiny on him.
Yeah, I think that metric is worth noting, but it's also interesting that they've made the playoffs for the past 7 or 8 years.
Sure,
It's
but then it's where they're getting bounced in those playoffs.
Right, yeah. And I think that obviously the 1 year in Seattle, they should have won that game hands down. They botched out at the end. And that's not on him.
No, that's Brandon Bostic and Jordy Nelson.
But. Yeah. But I do get your point in that for someone that's considered one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now and has been considered that way for a long time to only have one Super Bowl to really.
And it's not even just the win; it's just kind of those deep runs in the playoffs, like even another Super Bowl appearance is all I'm saying. And look, don't get me wrong, watching that Packers game, I mean, he's unreal. Look, I know a lot of people are calling the Hail Mary luck, but up until that throw is in the air, I mean, that's all him, and even the placement of that. And some of again placement. That's what I think is one of the best things he does, and just getting the ball out there.
I totally agree.
Touchdowns to Cobb and Adams were pinpoint accuracy.
Right.
I mean, no one else can do that. No one.
Right. And I think that going forward though, if he's able to perform at that high level in the Dallas game, he'll definitely keep it close. And I think in the fourth quarter, who knows?
Well, it's if Dallas can keep a lead too, because if Rodgers is going, then if they're down, can't really use Zeke that much. And I always think that's a little bit overused because if you've got a great running back, I mean the Vikings, they don't go into a game, if they made the playoffs and Adrian Peterson's healthy and saying, oh man, if we're down, we can't use this guy.
Right.
It's if your best player is your running back, you're still going to use him even if you're down. So.
Right. All right, so I'll take the Packers by 3 in that one. Moving on.
And I'm going to go with Dallas just because I think they're a more balanced team.
All right. Well, that sounds good. I bet you'll be right. My last prediction last week was rough, but we will see how it goes.
I was happy we were wrong. I didn't want to see the Giants anymore.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, that's just annoying. But so then in the other divisional matchup, Seahawks at Falcons. Great matchup down there.
Yeah, you know my pick already, but I think it's Matty Ice's year, man.
Really?
I think he's gonna get over the hump, man.
I just don't see him as a clutch playoff quarterback.
I know. I'm just saying. I think this is the year he breaks it through, and I have no faith in Seattle. I mean, Thomas Rawls is not going to get 27 carries for however many yards he did against the Falcons. I know their defense is bad, but it's not Detroit bad.
That's true, but I just think Russell Wilson. If we're going to measure him by his playoff performance, it's outstanding. He's been to 2 Super Bowls in 5-6 years.
Sure, I just think it's Russell Wilson.
Playoffs, right.
It's Wilson, Graham, and Doug Baldwin's good, but I don't see a whole lot in that team. And while the defense is still good, they're not the same without Earl Thomas.
Right. I do get your point. I just think the Seahawks.
Look, if I was in your position, I'd be calling me crazy because the Falcons haven't shown me anything.
Right.
But again, I'm riding a lot on the fact that I think Matt Ryan is going to break through the ice.
No, that's fair. I think just going off of what Seattle's been able to do in the past couple seasons in the playoffs, I just have to go with them.
I think the interesting matchup is going to be Sherman and Julio.
And Jones,
I want to see that again.
Great matchup. And I think Jones, he's got that height advantage. But
I also wonder, does Sherman get worse when you realize his targets are so low in every game, or is that him getting better? You just don't see it,
Right.
Because I don't think Stafford targeted him much at all. Oh,
no, right. So
against Seattle. Yeah, I don't think he targeted much at all. Mm-hmm. So I have the Falcons, but
all right,
I don't know. It's I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I think it's a significant win.
Right. All right. Well, I'll take Seahawks by 10. That's my prediction.
That's fair. And it's going to be in Atlanta, I think, right?
Atlanta. So I'll go 31-21 Seahawks. That's
fair. 30 burger, huh? Mm-hmm. Even against Vic Beasley?
Yep.
All right. I see you.
All right, so then AFC, we'll save the Pats for last, just because I know you'll take the Texans in that one. But
Know me so well.
yeah, let's see. Chiefs hosting Steelers, fantastic matchup.
That's a great matchup.
Probably the best game of the weekend.
That's the toughest one to pick for me.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm giving the slight edge to the Steelers, but that defense is suspect.
Right.
Here's my issue. Your starting corners are William Gay and Ross Cockrell for the Steelers.
Yeah.
That does not inspire my confidence. It's in Arrowhead, too, which is another dilemma. But, again, I just look at the offensive side of the ball. It's the first year that Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, and Big Ben are all in it together. Right. And, I mean, the thing I always talk about is, like, if you're building a team, if you're choosing a team, you know, who has the best number ones? You know, like, Antonio Brown is arguably the number one wide receiver in football, arguably. Le'Veon Bell, same thing for running back. And Big Ben, I think, is, you know, when healthy, a top 10 quarterback.
Right.
So, I mean, that's each of those. I mean, they're not all skill positions, but the most skilled, you know, the most skill that you need on a team, they have it all filled out. And that's what I think makes them the scariest.
I think I like the Chiefs at Arrowhead, though. I think they play really well at home. Solid defense. Alex Smith's great quarterback. But I think, on the whole, though, I've got to take Pittsburgh in this matchup.
Yeah, you know, so we're both going Pittsburgh.
They just kind of cruise against the Dolphins, but then it's like their defense. If their defense plays well enough to slow down that Chiefs offense, I think they can definitely win the game.
Yeah, I think it's all about playing well enough. And like I told you before, I think the matchup to watch is when Pittsburgh's offense is on the field and KC's defense is on the field.
Right.
Other than that, you know, you can get up, you know, go to the fridge and grab some snacks when KC's on the field.
Yeah.
I think Kelsey can do some damage, but I don't know.
He's
man.
solid. He's a solid player.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite players not on the Patriots is Eric Berry on the defense.
Oh, yeah.
He balls out. I love that guy.
He's solid.
Yeah.
Really solid. All right, so
especially coming back from cancer too. I mean, he doesn't look like he missed anything.
Crazy story.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that matchup will be interesting. And then last one, I'll take Pats by 30. I think they'll just roll the Texans.
Did you see the Vegas point spread?
No.
It's at like 17, 18.
Oh, that's ridiculous. For a playoff game.
For a playoff game.
For a divisional round playoff game.
I always, you know, part of me feels like this is kind of embarrassing. And not part of me, a lot of it. Like, just for the fact that, I mean, you're playing the divisional round against the Texans, who I think we're 9-7.
Right.
It just seems like, I get it, you know, you're the number one seed, you've earned these cupcake games, but at the same time, like, where's the challenge? I know it sounds super cocky, but come on, it's the Texans. Brock Osweiler was benched.
Yeah. It does sound a bit cocky, but I do think in the AFC there's 3 legitimate teams, and 2 of them.
Sure. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I like the home field advantage thing of playing at Foxborough, but, you know, assuming the Pats get past this first round, and I don't see a way they lose this game, you know, the other 2 are not a lock, you know, whoever it is, KC or Pittsburgh. That's a tough matchup.
Yeah.
But anyway, sticking with this game, I mean, against, the Raiders, Lamar Miller did not do much. Osweiler had a QBR over 80, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And he actually found DeAndre Hopkins, you know, for once in this entire season. I mean, I was a not-so-proud fantasy owner of DeAndre Hopkins this year. Yes, I took him 6th overall in my fantasy draft, and that didn't work out so well.
Are you serious?
But
6th.
I did, actually.
That's nice.
Come on, lay it on. I know.
No. I mean, I just think it's funny because I did better than you in our little ASU league this year.
Yeah. That one was rough.
It was kind of funny because you were giving me advice like earlier in the season, and then
see, the thing was, I took him. Yeah, I get it.
So I kind of did better than you, but you know,
I know.
You know,
but in both of my fantasy leagues, I took, which is kind of my rule. Like if I have the chance to take another great player in another league, I don't usually do the same. But I mean, he was on the board in both, so I took him because he did better with Brian Hoyer. So anyway,
it's Brock Osweiler.
If he finds Hopkins in this game and uses Fedorowicz well, who knows? Maybe the point spread will go down to like 10.
Okay.
But I
10. That's generous.
I don't know. I'll ask you. Do you see any way the Texans can win this game?
No. I think maybe they keep it close in the first half if they play good defense, but their defense looked okay. I think
even you could say the turnover battle, but even then, the Texans have to score.
Right. So. It's like, I think the Pats O-line's been so tough all year too. Like the Texans D has to get some pressure on Brady, make him uncomfortable in the pocket. That's the only way they'll kind of disrupt that rhythm.
It's been one of the things that I think is interesting because as a Patriots fan, I always, like get on the O line whenever Brady takes a
Hmm.
hit. But I
Right.
wonder how it stacks up to the rest of the league,
I think
because I
it's
think it's been really good. But
yeah.
I'm always curious how other people see the
I
Pats O
think
line.
it's I think it's only top notch. I think if you watch games this season, like defenses struggle to put pressure on him, and I think that the Pats play calling too is solid in the sense that like they can kind of see when teams are going to dial up the heat a little bit, and then might go to some quicker passes.
Yeah, I think Brady does a good job of like
Right.
checking out of pressures and
For
like
sure. I
stuff like
agree.
that. So yeah,
Yeah, I agree. So that sounds good. So I guess we got our predictions all set up. So we both got Steelers and Patriots meeting in the AFC
yeah,
Championship game, and then I've got Seahawks hosting Packers. You've got
yeah.
Cowboys hosting Falcons. So I guess next time we'll have to talk about those matchups.
This will be
But
fun. Let's see who's right this time.
yeah,
I
yeah,
feel
yeah, for
like you're gonna
sure.
beat me, so we'll see.
Okay, well that's very nice of you to say. Kind of transitioning, staying though in football with the college football championship. Clemson nail biter over Bama. Great matchup, 35-31. Clemson took on the national championship. Insane game. I think Deshaun threw for 420, three TDs. He was lights out. Any thoughts on that game?
My college football knowledge is limited, but
Right.
watching that game, a couple gut reactions are first Bo Scarborough for
Oh,
Alabama's beast.
he's real. He's a real
I
deal.
don't think he's going in the draft, but because
He's
I think he's
so
too young.
good. So
Um,
good.
and they've got a true freshman who's like our age at the quarterback,
Hmm. Yeah,
which
Hurts.
I'm still like trying to process that.
They have
But
Jalen Hurts. Yeah, true freshman. It's ridiculous.
but Deshaun Watson looked amazing,
Hmm.
and I thought, that was one of the games where it was surprising to me because not to say that no one gave Clemson a chance because that would be entirely
Right.
inaccurate, but
Hmm.
I mean, what was the storyline? Here's Bama again.
Hmm.
Saban's going to pull out some scheme from God knows where, and
Right.
they're going to, figure out a way to win.
Yeah.
And then there's Clemson driving. It looks, pretty even, which it should be with 1 and 2. But Clemson then driving down the field, 5 seconds left, and there they go, putting it in the end zone. I
Hmm.
mean, that was as good of, I think, as good of a championship game as you're going to see in
Right.
college football. And
Right.
I got to tell you, at least looking at Alabama, again, limited knowledge here, but all those defensive starters at least, and offensively as
Right.
well, but mostly defense, they all look like they could go in the first round to me.
I totally agree. And I think the game changer that no one was talking about was when Bo Scarborough got hurt. Like if you watch the first half, he had two like long touchdown runs, just kind of bruising that defense on Clemson. And
He's a big guy. He
it's a
looks like he could be
big
playing
guy.
D
He's tough
end.
to bring down. And
Exactly.
in the semifinal game, uh, Washington couldn't stop him, and that's a strong defense. And this Tiger defense, which shut out Ohio State, was getting bulldozed by Scarborough. He goes out, they kind of get their footing on the game and are able to win it.
Mm.
So I think, it's not just one player, obviously. It's that the Clemson offense played lights out in the second half. Deshaun Watson, Mike Williams had some crazy catches. And then Renfro on the game winner was awesome. But I think, if Scarborough stays in that game, I think Bama wins.
And I think it was really cool after the game to see like how much it kind of meant to the Clemson
Right.
players and the fans.
Totally agree. I totally agree.
Not that it would have meant any less to Alabama, but just kind of like they were like, we did this for everybody, and
Right.
the parades that they showed on TV afterwards, bringing it back to
Hmm.
Carolina. That was cool.
Right. Yeah, and like it's got to be tough too because last year, they played that game. Bama wins 45-41 shootout in the national title game, and then you kind of have that looming over you all year, and you get a second chance at it, and that'd just be tough to walk away two times, come up one game short.
I keep thinking about like the recruiting that goes in every
Oh, I
offseason,
know. It's
I
crazy.
mean, would you had Alabama it was either last year or the year before losing Clinton Dix and the Giant safety whose name is escaping me. Landon
Landon Collins.
Collins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Landon Collins.
Two guys who deservedly went really high in the
Hmm.
draft, and then just immediately being able to shore up that defense. Again, Clemson was right up there too, so that's why I like this matchup is because two schools who recruit really well, and
Totally.
it's kind of like I know a lot of people complain about it, like it gets boring when it's 1 and 2,
Hmm.
but I think I like it because
Hmm.
while you don't have an underdog, I think it's the best chance to sort of combat these power
Hmm.
teams, and clearly it worked out for Clemson. So
Yeah, and I think that as I was watching the game, I think Watson's performance got a lot of comparisons to Vince Young in the '05 Rose Bowl, where Texas went in. They were like slight underdogs to USC. It wasn't huge, but they were probably like favored by, or I think the Trojans were favored by about 7.5 points that game.
Yeah.
and you're going up against Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, like big established program,
I
and
think Lendale White was on that team
right,
too.
yeah, and they were loaded. And then Vince Young goes in there, plays a game of his life, has a game-winning touchdown with like 30 seconds left. It was just it felt in that aura a very similar game. I think Watson, he made some tough throws in the fourth quarter. Mike Williams had some amazing catches, so I think Clemson had some individual performers really step up, which was an awesome game, an awesome
I'm
victory for
putting
them.
you on the spot. Where do you think Watson's going in the draft?
Mid first round. I go mid
Yeah, not
first.
not to the Browns, number one overall.
No, I think Mike Williams, he'll go like top five. He's a number one wideout coming out of Clemson. He's unreal. He had some amazing catches on some good Bama corners, especially late in the game. Some clutch plays.
Clemson wideouts are always great.
Yeah, they're always solid. Um, but yeah, I think Watson like mid first round possibly. The Browns though, they might need a QB. They could take number one honestly,
They could do whatever they
just
want,
because
and it won't help.
yeah, they just don't really have the core of a good franchise, and they just basically should reboot. But I don't know.
I don't know. You can't really reboot when you haven't been anything, but that's
Right.
it's a little
Yeah.
hateful of me on the
Yeah,
Browns. They're
that's true.
trying. They're trying.
They were 1-15 this year, so pretty terrible. But yeah. Well, yeah. So I guess final question to you. So where does like I think it's funny because people are talking about how this is like a huge loss for Bama, but it's like their reputation is still number one in the country, and I think they were the best team in the nation this year, hands down. Clemson just played the game of their lives in the second half to beat them.
I agree with you 100%. I think Clemson really rose to the occasion.
Right.
And I think the other thing, too, is again, I talked about earlier how I thought Super Bowls are kind of an unfair comparison sometimes for quarterbacks. I think a lot of times the team that loses title games from the Super Bowl to, I mean, hell, if you even want to go to the Little League World
Right.
Series, that is always like a negative.
Hmm.
Like I asked someone the other day, I was like, what would you rather do? For talking about NFL, lose in the conference championship game or lose in the Super Bowl, and it was like lose in the conference championship game, which I don't really understand because you
Yeah.
go one game further, but it's like
Yeah.
that sort of crushing defeat, whatever. I mean, everybody remembers. I'll go to what I know: 2007 Patriots for undefeated season, then loss. But I
Hmm.
mean, you still got all the way to the Super Bowl, not
Right.
condoning loss at all. That's one of the worst moments of my life. But anyway, it's just the general sort of statement that the losing team of these championship, it's like it's a failure. I mean, you
Right.
got all the way,
Right.
and like we talked about, Bama's gonna be on fire with their recruiting,
Of
and
course.
they'll be right back in it, probably winning another two in the next
Well,
four
yeah.
years or something.
And I think that comparison can extend to basketball. Last year, like the Golden State Warriors went 73-9, best record of all time. Then they lose in the finals to the Cavs, and that whole season is considered a failure. But I would
Yep.
argue it was still one of the greatest seasons ever played by any team.
We were there. We saw that at
Right.
Cronkite.
Yeah.
Remember?
So I mean, like, granted, they probably should have lost to the Thunder in the conference finals because they were down 3-1.
I agree. I agree.
And got lucky and came back. But that regular season they had 73-9, I think is the best in history, not just because of their record, but because of the margin they were beating teams by, and because teams were just helpless against them. And then
Yeah,
people,
that one I think to me, I ironically enough look at more of a failure than some others because they were up 3-1. I mean,
right,
and then the memes were born. But
right,
yeah, no, in principle, I do agree with you. Yeah,
yeah, and like I think, although they did have 3 games to close it out, which definitely stings for a while. I think like you look at their dominance during that season, and that season can't be considered a failure just because they blew a finals lead.
not at all.
Like,
And that's the other thing you're
right,
talking about with this national championship game and with the Super Bowl.
mhm,
Those are one game
right,
championships. It's not the World Series. It's not the NBA
mhm,
Finals. The with the NBA Finals and with the World Series, those are the best teams usually win.
right,
Not always, but
right,
usually.
totally,
With those the national championship and the Super Bowl, you can have a bad day and
right.
tough luck. You know
Because one game. Yeah,
exactly.
and I think that's the beauty of March Madness too in college basketball, right? Like that's why there's so many upsets because the smaller the sample size, the larger room for upsets.
Yeah,
Because in that tournament they're playing one game.
I
So
love
if
March Madness, but they call it Madness for a reason. It
right,
upsets a lot of people.
so if a top seed has an off day and an underdog is on, and then you got a huge upset. Whereas in the NBA playoffs, it's a 7-game series, so there's rarely any upsets because when you open up your sample size to more games, the top team is going to win more times than not.
For sure, definitely.
All right. All right. Well, thanks for taking the time, Sevrin. down.
Of course,
talking.
as always.
We'll
Anything for you, Jacob.
check back in next time to talk about NFL. All right, man. Talk to you later.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, man. I'll see
Yeah,
you.
peace.